to make sure that wedding day is perfect. But not only just the ceremony, she's preparing herself. Now, my sister is actually about to get married. In fact, we're leaving May 30th to fly to Texas so I can actually do the wedding for them. I'm very excited about it. My wife and I also have a very good friend who is engaged, and she's getting married in July. We're in a conversation with her a little while ago, and I hope this illustration will be taken in the right way, but she was just talking about getting ready for things, and and I'm offering her actually a snack, and I'm usually always offering her or whoever I'm with a snack because I tend to eat all the time. But she said, no, I can't. And I said, well, why? And she said, well, I'm getting married. And I said, well, what does that have to do with it? And she said, I'm on the LGN diet. And I said, what is the LGN diet? And she goes, Todd, think about it. And I thought about it. And I said, well, okay, what is the LGN diet? I don't know. And she said, Todd, I'm getting married. I said, okay, I'm just not making the connection here. And she said, it's the look good naked diet. And I went, oh, okay, I'm sorry I had to ask. But there's something about a bride that almost has to be intimidating. Because you realize for the first time, you're going to stand before your groom. And there's nothing to hide the real you from him. You're totally exposed before him. And there's something about Christ coming for us that is very significant because, yes, he is the one we long for and he fulfills us. We long for that day where we get to be united with our groom. However, along with that day also comes judgment. It also comes the day when we have to stand before him and I cannot hide who I truly am before him. He looks at me for me. And he looks at me and he evaluates how I spent these engagement days. Was I preparing for that day when I would be united with him? Was I preparing myself so that I could be a bride, pure and spotless and blameless before him? Was I a good steward of my engagement time, so to say? We look forward to that day. Now, with that lens, I want you to turn with me to the book of Philippians. Book of Philippians chapter 1, and we're going to start in verse 9. Now, in reading the book of Philippians, you have to understand, Paul is writing. The Philippian church was a group of people that Paul was very endeared to. Just by reading this letter that he wrote to them, you can tell that Paul had a significant amount of affection towards them. He longed to be with them. He was so thankful for them. And Paul, he communicates this clearly. All right, this was not a church that he writes to correct, to rebuke. He writes out of love and affection for them. And he starts off his letter with this. And in the midst of this love and affection that he is sharing with them and telling them how much he longs to be with them and he loves them, he says a couple of things. One thing that he says this in verse 6. He says, I'm sure of this, that he who began a good work in you will bring it to completion in the day of Jesus Christ. One thing that Paul knows is that just as Jesus Christ revealed himself to him, to Paul, and began his work in him and is bringing it to completion, and Paul can look back and see how all of those things work together to bring him to that day when he knew he was going to meet his Maker, when he knew he was going to be face to face with God, to that ultimate wedding day for him. And Paul knew it was coming quick. He was in prison in Rome at the time he's writing this letter to the Philippians. Paul knows that his death is somewhat imminent. Maybe not immediately going to happen, but it's going to happen fairly soon. Okay, he knows he probably won't leave Rome But he's back and forth on it. He's not for sure either way. Okay? But Paul knows this, that he who began a good work in you, just like he did in me, will complete it in you, just like he is completing it in me. The work is on Jesus Christ. He will complete his work in you. Okay? But then Paul says this in verse 9 to these people that he loves tremendously. He describes to them what he prays about them. Okay? Now, this word for prayer here, there's a couple words you can use for prayer. This word for prayer, the significance of it is as if Paul, after coming to God and weeding through all of the non-necessities, so to say, after getting through all of the superficial issues in life, his inmost desire that he shares when he is face to face with God. That's this word that he uses here for prayer. It's actually, it can be translated to communicate toward, or to wish toward, to speak face to face with almost. Okay? So Paul is saying this: my inmost desire when I am before God for you is this. I'm going to read the whole thing, and then I just want to go back and just take one piece at a time and explain this verse to you. Okay? My inmost desire for you is that your love may abound more and more with knowledge and all discernment, so that you may approve what is excellent, and so be pure and blameless for the day of Christ, filled with the fruit of righteousness that comes through Jesus Christ to the glory of God. Okay? As I go through this, I want you to keep that fresh in your mind, this marriage language, this perspective of a wedding, of us waiting for our bride, for our groom. Okay, preparing to meet him on our wedding day. My prayer for you, alright, my prayer is this, okay? And then he begins to explain what his prayer is. There's actually 3 main phrases in here, and they're all what are called hina clauses in the Greek, or result clauses. And they actually kind of lead one to the other. And so I want to do my best to explain this to you as we go. The first thing that he prays is this: that your love may abound more and more. Okay? Now what he means is this. This word love, I'm sure you're familiar with the term agape. Okay? He's talking about your affection toward Christ. That your affection toward Christ may abound or grow. Okay? The word here is actually overflow, to go beyond that mark of fullness. Okay? That your affection toward Christ will go beyond the mark of fullness to a higher degree, and then a higher degree, and then a higher degree. This word more and more, that it will continue to build and build and build. Okay? And then he says, and this is how it happens. Okay? With knowledge. The word he uses here for knowledge is not just a knowing, but it actually has a preposition before it, which means above. So it's an ever-increasing knowledge. Okay? Knowing the thing in itself, but knowing it, the emphasis here is on the action of the learner. Okay? And so it's almost like an apprehending of something, a pouring over of something. Okay? Growing more and more in that thing. So that you can grow more and more in your knowledge of Him. Because as you become to know Him, I don't have to convince you to fall in love with Christ. You are made for Him. All I have to do is introduce you to Him. No one had to convince me to fall in love with my wife. I just had to meet her. I remember the first time, I didn't even meet her. I saw her on campus the first time when I was in college. And actually, I saw her interact with another friend that had been gone for a semester. There was a guy, and he came on campus, and I saw the two of them, the relationship that had been built before. And they hugged, and I saw something in her, and I said, God, I want a friend like that. I don't know what it was in her, but the affection that I saw in her, the friendship that she had with this other guy, I said, God, I want a friend like that. And from that point on, our friendship grew. We were best friends for 3.5 years. We finally decided, you know what, we should probably date. That was October. In November, I bought her a ring. In December I proposed, and in July we got married. We kind of skipped the whole dating thing because I knew that I wanted to spend the rest of my life with her. Before we ever even dated, I would go into the finance office at the school, and I would ask them, well, what does Rachel have left on her bill at the end of the semester? And they would tell me, and I would say, well, I would usually, if I had money left over, I was on a scholarship, and I usually had some money left over, and I would say, well, here, pay off her bill, and they would say, okay. At first they thought, well, why? And I said, well, I have extra scholarship money, and I can use that, so pay her bill. Well, in the back of my mind, what I was thinking is, well, this is going to be my bill